Good afternoon. Welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. I have no idea what that recording glitch was, but I'm going to assume this call is being recorded. There's not much I can do about it if that's not in fact the case, but let's go ahead and proceed. Today is January 15th, 2025. When I had first agreed to represent Trusts Unlimited on these calls, I did not think at the time that I'd still be here in 2025. I'm sure that's also the case for individuals that had purchased the Iraqi dinar that far back, but here we are. However, the good news is that this long ride is going to end, and it's going to end very shortly, and I think we're all going to be very happy and satisfied with the result. It's going to be a little bit shorter call today for the reason that, as they say down here in the South, all hell done broke loose. I'm getting 100 contacts a day between phone calls, texts, emails. I'm expecting people to start throwing rocks at my place because they want to talk to me. I'm doing the absolute best I can to get back to everyone. However, I must say, for individuals that received our initial trust package 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, it's not a good idea to give me a lot of jazz because you've had a couple of years to decide to proceed, and it's not going to be snap for you. I'm going to deal first and foremost with the people that responded in a timely fashion. I will get to everybody, however long it takes, but there is going to be a pecking order, and those individuals that have contacted us, have submitted their application, have submitted their fee, have maybe perhaps a few questions to ask, I'm happy to help them, and I'm happy to help everyone. But again, there will be a pecking order here, and it's got to be that way. It's the only fair way to do things. So let's go ahead and get started here today. The first thing I wanted to say, and this is just my opinion, I believe that planet Earth is already operating with a new exchange rate in Iraq. It's the only thing that makes sense. It makes no sense for other nations to enter into very expensive international contracts to rebuild the infrastructure of Iraq. And it makes no sense for central banks of other nations to enter into currency swaps with Iraq with a currency that, in their opinion, is and will remain in a program rate. Therefore, I can only assume that they either have information to allow them to conclude that the Iraqi dinar will not be in a program rate much longer, nor can Iraq survive at a program rate given the financial obligations that it has involved itself in. There was an article, I wish I could find it right now, that I wanted to talk about. Let me see if I can. Very briefly, it was talking about what's going on with the CBI and with the auctions. Just want to read part of it here. The auction stopped and became foreign reinforcements, or the currency window. The CBI is not selling money to the banks anymore. The banks must go get their money from other banks outside of the country, hence the currency swaps and eventually, very soon, being on the Forex. Basically, the CBI is monitoring the operations that banks within Iraq are engaged in with other banks internationally. So if that doesn't tell you that the program rate is about to end, why would any international bank enter in any agreement with any country's central banks, banks within that country being monitored by their central bank if they're in a program rate? Makes no sense at all financially. So that, along with a lot of other things, tells us that this long ride is just about over. But where exactly are we in Iraq today? Well, we know that we're involved at the present time in the third reading of the 2025 budget. Now, in my opinion, the third reading is perfunctory, meaning it's just virtually meaningless, because the 2025 budget will go into the Gazette in 30 days, period. The third reading, therefore, is perfunctory. It's just something that it's an I they have to dot, it's a T they have to cross, but we can see the word with or without that I being dotted or the T being crossed. A passage of that budget, of course, also means the formal implementation of the HCL and the payment of salaries. Again, we need an exchange rate. Then we have Article 12 of the Constitution, which is basically has to do with compensating Kurdistan for the cost of production and distribution of oil. So this would also explain why Soudani and Barzani are locked in arms, pushing everything forward, and a good relationship between the government of Kurdistan and the government of Iraq and the individuals involved, meaning Soudani and Barzani, is very, very important. Then there's the issue of the ATMs, which are not just in the cities, but are being installed nationally, and they're loaded with the new category small notes. Why would a country pay to produce the new category small notes and coinage, produce ATMs, disseminate those ATMs nationally, and load them with the new category small notes, which are utterly worthless at a program rate? It makes absolutely no sense. So this is where we find ourselves today. There's not much more to say. If the dinar hit the 4X when I got off of this call, I wouldn't be surprised. If it hit tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised. If it took 30 days, given what we've been through with Iraq, I wouldn't be surprised there, because it's always been 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But Iraq, in my opinion, has officially and unequivocally hit the point of no return. The Iraqi dinar will not be in a program rate for much longer. Those of us that have purchased the Iraqi dinar have patiently waited. Some of us have been chided by friends and family for the purchase of the dinar because they were told it was a scam and they believe it. Well, they made a mistake. Our patience is going to pay off. Now, the other issue is, how does that directly affect us as American citizens? Well, Donald Trump will be inaugurated in less than a week. And like all great presidents, half of the country doesn't like him. The loyalists hated George Washington. The South hated Abraham Lincoln. And at this point in time, with the historical view, anyone would be hard-pressed to not say that they were probably our 2 greatest presidents. Well, I'm not putting Donald Trump in that triumvirate with them, but if he accomplishes the things that he says he wants to accomplish, he's going to be in the conversation. He has met with Soudani. He has talked about undoing the entire central bank fiat system. He has said that this will bring us back to a new golden age, referring to the age in the United States roughly between 1880 and 1910, the period of greatest enrichment for this country, referred to as the Gilded Age, just prior to the creation of the Federal Reserve, which basically flatlined everything. So those of us that had the wisdom to purchase the Iraqi dinar and some of the other currencies, the dong is another currency that looks very, very promising. It's an interesting situation with the dong. A lot of people have argued, well, the dong has been in a program rate for decades. Well, that's true, but that's because Vietnam and their currency, the dong, has been in a closed system with China. Well, given what's going on globally and given the fact that Vietnam now is wanting to institute trade agreements with a lot of other nations outside of the umbrella of China, that the dong looks to me like another very, very good investment. As a matter of fact, I've had a number of people say, well, I'm not a wealthy guy. I purchase as much dinar as I could afford, but one of the first things I'm going to do when the dinar reinstitutes, it hits the Forex, is buy some dong, and that's probably a pretty good idea. But the other issue, of course, would be how do you protect your wealth for yourself, for your children, for your grandchildren? Very simply, it's by utilizing something that all knowledgeable, wealthy individuals use. The Kennedys is a good example. All of their assets are in trust for a reason. As a matter of fact, Caroline Kennedy, who was going to run for the Senate, finally decided not to run, not because her numbers didn't look good, but because she would be forced to disclose certain things that are within trust, and she just didn't want to do it. So these trusts are very, very powerful. If you're an individual that purchased these currencies, or you're an individual who has a reasonable expectation that they're going to inherit a substantial amount of wealth, win a lottery, whatever, the smart thing to do is to establish a trust, place that asset in trust before that wealth occurs. No one will know that you possess that wealth. You will operate in life under your Social Security number. The trust will operate under an EIN number. If your assets are in trust, your privacy and your anonymity is preserved because no one has the right to know what's in that trust. The only way to pierce a trust like this is if an individual can go to a court of law and prove that you've defrauded them. Anything short of that, that information is not available to them. The trust will allow you to avoid IRS scrutiny because the business activities occur within the trust. You're merely a beneficiary of the benefits. You will be able to avoid the cost and delay of probate, the federal estate tax, which can be as much as 65% of your estate, in excess of $12 million. You will also basically be unable to be sued because you can only be sued for the value of the currency at the time you transferred it out of title to the trust, not what it's worth subsequently. So the example I like is you have 10 million dinar, you paid $10,000 for it, that's all it was worth, you transfer it to the trust. Let's say the currency revalues for $1 conservatively. That now your $10,000 property is worth $10 million. Can you be sued for $10 million? No. Why? Because the currency was only worth $10,000 when you transferred it out of title to the trust. And then there's something called segregation of assets. As those of you who have been kind enough to listen in the past, we have a package of trusts. This means that each individual asset, home, cars, boats, etc., is placed in a separate sub-trust. Why? If any one of those assets is ever involved in litigation, it would only be that asset that would be in jeopardy because all of the other assets are in separate sub-trusts, which are separate legal entities or persons having nothing whatsoever to do with the litigation in question. So for all of these reasons, if you have currencies, if you have dinar, and you've been paying attention, the leverage and the wealth that the windfall that you will receive when this currency revalues, and it literally could happen at any time. So those of you that have purchased currencies, congratulations, your long wait's just about over. If you've purchased these currencies, you understand that they could reinstitute, revalue, be on the Forex and some of the other baskets in the very near future. This is going to be your last opportunity to do what any knowledgeable, wealthy person does, which is to protect that wealth for themselves and their families and their generations to come by placing it in trust. If you want to contact us to get our initial package, you can contact us by email or phone. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimited LLC at gmail.com. That's trusts with an S, unlimited LLC at gmail.com. Our phone service is 307-274-4122. That's 307-274-4122. Ordinarily, this would be the time that I would leave the call, but I want to stay for a couple more minutes because I'm an individual that I'm a historian. I've got degrees in political science, macroeconomics, finance. I've worked in these areas for decades. I worked in Washington for a period of time. I know a lot of the individuals in Washington. I know the Potomac two-step. I know how these people work. And I want to tell you, this country has been through a lot, not just in the last 4 years, but arguably for the last few decades. But I think things are going to change not only in this country but globally. We're moving away from the banking fiat system. We're moving away from fractional banking. We're moving into Basel-compliant currencies, meaning that the value of currencies in respective countries are going to be based on the known natural resources of those countries and not artificial devaluations by central banks in those countries. In other words, all the games are going to stop, and we're going to have real value. We're going to go back to a people's currency. I also believe, and again, this is just my opinion, I think that one of the things Donald Trump's going to do is try to order an audit for the Federal Reserve. If the Federal Reserve is ever audited, I think the Federal Reserve will be ended permanently. And I think a lot of people on both sides of the aisle will be going to jail. And the ones that don't go to jail won't be able to walk down the street in broad daylight. When people understand the theft, the central bank system, our Federal Reserve, which is linked to a central bank system, which goes all the way back to 1604 in Europe, and I've said this before, is the longest standing criminal enterprise in known history. They've been ripping us off for 5 or 6, 7, 800 years. What better way to steal from people than to create the currency and create laws where in order to purchase goods and services, you have to borrow the money from them. So not only are you paying for the goods and services, you're paying for them with borrowed money, so you also have to pay interest on that money. That impoverishes people. But for those of us that have currencies and have established our trust, it doesn't even matter if they get rid of the Federal Reserve System, because you will be handed a substantial amount of wealth. All you need to do is protect it through trust, invest it wisely. That's all you're going to need to do. And it doesn't matter what system they come up with, what manner of theft that they come up with. There's ways, by the way, to circumvent the Federal Reserve System. You can use state currencies. You can purchase gold and silver and other tangible assets. There's all kinds of things you can do. But those, of course, are going to be discussions that we hopefully will have after the revaluation. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be involved because I'm not a young man. I have a very large family. I've been involved in this longer than I had anticipated, and I have a lot of things that I want to do with the time God has left me. And I know that's true for a lot of you. But the best thing anyone can do who has had the wisdom to purchase these currencies is to protect them. And the best way to protect them is the way you protect all of your property, to place it in trust for yourself and your family. So that's all I wanted to say for today. we're in a very good place. We've been watching these currencies, and the time has dwindled. We've watched from year to year, from month to month, from week to week, and now we're in a position where we're literally watching day to day. That's how close, in my opinion, that we are to this being over for us. And then we can spend the time doing what we wanted to do, which is to pursue our dreams for ourselves and our families. So I'd like to thank all of you for listening to our call. Certainly, if you're someone that's called in for the first time or only a few times, this is going to be your last chance, in my opinion, to establish this trust for your family and your friends. And after we've acquired this wealth, the line is not going to be between rich and poor. For those of us that have these currencies, the line is going to be between those that have protected these assets in trust and those that have not. It's going to be too late to receive all of the benefits available by divesting yourself of the asset pre-RV. Yes, you can do it post-RV, and yes, you will be in a much better place, and yes, there are benefits to enjoy. But that pales in comparison to what you can do and what you can accomplish if you divest yourself of the asset prior to the revaluation. So despite the fact that we're absolutely slammed over here, and I'm going to be on the phone all day today, all day tomorrow until this thing happens, I strongly suggest you contact us to get our initial no-obligation package. Review the package. Contact us if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you. But pay close attention, because every day, every hour, we're moving inextricably to our blessing. We've waited. We deserve it, and it's coming. Our next call, of course, will be next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. You can also, if you go to YouTube and then type in Trusts Unlimited LLC conference calls, if there was a recent call, it should appear. We try to get our calls up within 12 hours of doing a call, meaning that this call should be up sometime today, even if it's later in the evening. But if something of dramatic nature does happen, that's what we will do. Otherwise, we will be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for listening, and everyone. Keep all of this in prayer, because I believe we're really, really close. Take care and have a great week. Bye-bye now.